And going to Davis again, underthrown, and this time it's picked off. A one-handed interception by Andrew Booth.
No target.
What is up, everybody? My name is Jeffrey Gardner. Welcome back once again to another episode of Upset Alert. It is episode number 90 of the Ultimate College Football Podcast, celebrating all 130 teams in FBS. We are here today coming at you on a Monday, looking to get into a little bit of this discussion here of kind of what the weekend was in college football. And get into, a little bit of early week predictions. We've got a couple of Thursday night games, Thanksgiving Day games, that we will get into predictions for on here, in addition to our normal wrap up episode. So with all that being said, we're gonna be kind of on a little bit of a tighter schedule this week. Likely gonna go ahead and record and do our normal Thursday episode on Wednesday, so that we're not recording on Thanksgiving Day. So just be aware of that. That you'll probably have another episode coming at you a little earlier than is the norm, and we will. Ooh, goodness, we got some audio issues there. Apologies for that. Maybe just a little contact with the microphone there was causing a little bit of a feedback issue there for a second. Apologies for that. If anyone watching twitch.tv/robotbraineater live here on video or on podcast later, I'm sure that'll come through. So apologies for the little brief technical difficulties there. But nonetheless, like I said, we'll be coming at you a little bit earlier for our weekly prediction episode. That'll go up on Wednesday, not Thursday this week. So just a heads up on that. And then today's episode, of course, as always, we're recording live on a Monday afternoon, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon this Monday, and we'll be up around 7 o'clock on podcast services. Thanks for joining us, however you are joining us today, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Google, YouTube, or, of course, live here, like I said, on twitch.tv/robotbraineater. Thank you guys so much for joining us here today, and we're going to go ahead without any further housekeeping or anything like that, and just jump right in to the results from this week. Now, we did have a little bit of a shorter schedule this week, lots of good games, but a little bit of a shorter schedule with a lot of games getting postponed or canceled due to COVID-19 related reasons. So let's go ahead and get into some of this a little bit here. We'll start all the way back on Tuesday night. I know we got into the results of these on Thursday's episode already, but we're going to kind of review some of these just very briefly. I'll just read out some of the scores here. So Tuesday night we had Buffalo at Bowling Green. Buffalo won that one 42-17. Kent State won 69-35 over Akron. We had Miami, Ohio get canceled. Wednesday night, we had Ball State 31-25 over Northern Illinois. Toledo 45-28 over Eastern Michigan. And Western Michigan 52-44 over Central Michigan. We get into Thursday's games. This is the ones that we have not discussed at all yet on the show. We had a actually great game Thursday night, just the one lone game. Number 25, Tulsa, held on somehow, some way to beat Tulane. It was a 30-24 win, double overtime. Tulsa wound up winning that one. It was really a struggle for the Golden Hurricane against a pretty resilient, pretty pesky Tulane team here. So shouts to Tulsa for getting it done, but Tulane really hung in there with them. That's a Tulane team, by the way, that is just 5-5 on the season compared to Tulsa, who's 5-1 following the win. So good effort by the Green Wave against Tulsa on the road there. And we did have Utah State at Wyoming scheduled for Thursday night, got canceled. Friday night had a few games here, a handful of them. Louisville won 30-0 over Syracuse on Friday evening. Pretty good looking win for Louisville. Neither of these teams are good this year, I think it's safe to say. Neither of them have had very good seasons record-wise. 3-6 is Louisville after the win. Syracuse falls to just 1-8 on the season, but still a 30-point win in conference. You can't argue with that for Louisville. Minnesota wins 34-31 over Purdue, so a pretty close one here. Purdue got a phantom offensive pass interference call in this game that really cost them the football game. I don't know if you guys got a chance to see a video of this. We did retweet it over on our Twitter account at Upset Alert Pod. So if you wanna see some more evidence of what I think has overall been a horrible season for officiating crews nationwide in college football, Purdue really got hosed on this one, quite frankly. Minnesota does get the win, though, so you got to give a little bit of credit, at least, to the Golden Gophers for that one. Florida Atlantic really did about what you expect to UMass, one of the worst teams in college football. FAU wins 24-2. And Air Force won 28-0 over a really bad New Mexico team. New Mexico right down there, not far above UMass in our updated rankings of all 127 FBS teams. Again, that's over on our Twitter account at Upset Alert Pod. We had UAB at UTEP scheduled for Friday night as well. That one did get canceled. Moving into Saturday, we started right in that noontime slot with one of the biggest games of the day, maybe the biggest game of the day, a top 10 matchup. Number 3, Ohio State hosting number 9, Indiana. Huge game. Huge game. It was a big game feel, really, even despite the limited capacity in the stadium and everything like that. I do think the games still can have that vibe around them. And Ohio State, Indiana, as you're watching some of the video highlights here live on twitch.tv/robotbraineater, we are showing some of the video highlights of this game. And you see that Ohio State really jumped out to a huge lead in this game. They gave some haymakers early, and it looked like they were just going to run away with this one. It was 35-7 at one point in this football game, and Indiana battled back to hold Ohio State to 42. So really held them to just that one touchdown after that biggest margin of the game, 35-7, and Indiana battles all the way back to 42-35. The Buckeyes do hold on for the win in that one, but Indiana, really, you got to tip your cap. I mean, this team played with a ton of heart like they have all season long. They looked really good out there, especially in the second half, of course. Not so much in the first half. Ty Freifogel at wide receiver is a serious playmaker for them. And is it Michael? I believe Michael Penix Jr. Yes, that's correct. Michael Penix Jr. at quarterback for them threw for nearly 500 yards, 5 touchdowns in the game, just 1 pick. So you got to give credit where credit's due. The Hoosiers have been really good this season. I do think maybe not quite a top 10 team, but they are certainly at least in the conversation this season for one of those top 10 spots. They're one of the best teams in the Big Ten this year, it certainly looks like. We had number 6, Florida, who didn't have quite as highly ranked of an opponent, we'll say, to put it generously. They were on the road against Vanderbilt. Probably the worst team in the SEC this year are the Commodores, and the Gators struggled early with them. At halftime, just leading by 1 score, and the Gators wound up pulling away in this one, a 38-17 win. Not really a sexy win on the road against Vanderbilt, but you do get the win if you're the Florida Gators here, and I don't think you're really going to argue with that at this point in the season. This is a team in Florida that controls its own destiny for sure. If they win out, then they will be a college football playoff team. Now, how likely that is when you've got to go through Alabama is an entirely different story. But this is a really good Florida Gators team. I don't think anyone is going to be here to dispute that, and they showed that, at least in the second half against Vanderbilt. And, of course, Kyle Trask, had to flex his muscle, throw a few more touchdowns in this one. We had App State on the road against number 15, Coastal Carolina. This was the biggest game of the year so far for App State. This is pretty much the battle for the Sun Belt Eastern Division, with the Western Division already wrapped up by Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns. This is a pretty darn good App State football team. Remember, who had a magical season last year. The only game they lost was against Georgia Southern, and what most folks saw was a little bit of a fluky game. And this is a team that came on the road to Coastal Carolina and went blow for blow with them for most of the game. Coastal pulls away a little bit late in the fourth quarter to make it 34-23. Coastal Carolina, the Chants, come up big in a big situation once again. You got to give some love to this Coastal Carolina team. They are now 8-0 on the season. They are definitely the team to beat in the Sun Belt, to me, it looks like anyway. Even Louisiana, out of the Western Division, who had already clinched that division, is a team that does have one loss on the schedule already. So you got to give the edge a little bit to Coastal Carolina in that Sun Belt Conference going forward. That is a legit shot to go undefeated in the regular season, and perhaps in that conference championship game as well for the Chanticleers. We had Memphis hosting Stephen F. Austin. This is a game that started out a little slow for Memphis, perhaps, but Memphis ultimately wins this one, as you would expect, by a lot, 56-14. We had Illinois going on the road and actually upsetting Nebraska 41-23. This one came as a bit of a surprise to me. Nebraska was about a 2-touchdown favorite in this one. And the Illini really came on the road and got the job done here. Illinois and Nebraska, both, you could say, have been some of the worst teams in the Big Ten this year from the looks of it. But give credit where credit's due. The Fighting Illini of Illinois going on the road and getting a conference win. Maybe not a great football team that they were playing against, but getting a 2-score win nonetheless on the road. Can't argue with that too much. Texas State, speaking of upsets Arkansas State. Arkansas State, if you have been listening to the show for a while, Arkansas State I actually picked to make the Sun Belt Conference Championship game. That was a stupid pick, it seems, at least. This team is 3-6 on the season. I still, every week it seems, have a little bit of a soft spot for this team and want to give them credit for being better than they actually are. Texas State, though, winning is still a surprise here, regardless of this team being 3-6, because Texas State moves to 2-9. This was just their second win of the season. They put up 47 points on this Arkansas State defense to win in a shootout, 47-45. The Arkansas State defense non-existent pretty much in this football game. The Texas State Bobcats we saw early in the year against SMU give a little bit of a run for their money to a very good Mustangs team. They can score some points, and if you got no defense, you're in danger against Texas State. So moving forward here, East Carolina wins 28-3 on the road against a bad Temple team. Neither one of these teams are very good, quite frankly, but ECU picks up a big win over the Owls there. A very close one. That I thought might be a sneaky good game of the week. Army hosting Georgia Southern. Army picks up a 1-point win, 28-27. Georgia Southern really looked early like they might run away with this one. Started off 14-0 and really controlled the game most of the way. Army late rallies back to win by just 1 point. The Black Knights, I do think, were the better team on paper coming into this game, but Georgia Southern really put up a valiant fight, and early, like I said, looked like they might even run away with the game. So if you're Georgia Southern, you have to feel kind of like you let this one slip away a little bit. You maybe want to get better about finishing games, putting the pedal to the metal all the way to the finish line. Whereas for Army, you have to like the kind of resilient spirit of the Black Knights in this football game. A team that has had some ups and downs. Overall has a good record, though, at 7-2 for the season. You like what you see out of this Army football team that maybe starts to work themselves back toward the bottom portion of the top 25 if they can keep winning a few more games as the regular season comes to a close here. We had LSU on the road against Arkansas. LSU wins 27-24. That one a back and forth game as well. A lot of folks discussing a potential bad call against Arkansas in that football game that might have cost them. Again, not the first time that's happened to Arkansas this season, but regardless, LSU does pick up the road win 27-24 over the Hogs. We had FIU on the road against Western Kentucky. Two teams that aren't particularly great. Western Kentucky wins this one 38-21. That's about all you can say about it, is that they pick up a win. They move to 4-6, which is okay. This is a Western Kentucky team that I picked in the preseason to go 8-4. FIU is a terrible team, though. They moved to 0-5 on the season. They're probably one of the 10 worst in college football so far this year. We had North Texas hosting Rice. North Texas wins 27-17 right here. Again, two teams that aren't particularly great. North Texas does move to 3-3, so they do get back to 500. Rice, however, just 1-2. They've had some games get canceled, I believe, and then had a late start to the season as well. We had number 8 BYU win 66-14 over North Alabama. That's exactly what you expect. I won't waste your time with that one. BYU continues to look good. We had a close one, kind of a back-and-forth affair between UTSA and Southern Miss. UTSA wins this one on the road, 23-20. This one was closer than I thought it might be. I mean, I guess I had an idea that it would possibly be close. I did pick UTSA in this game, but Southern Miss did show me a little something because UTSA has been a decent team this season for the most part. They moved to 6-4 actually, whereas Southern Miss falls to a miserable 2-7 on the season. They've had all kinds of woes that we've discussed at length on this podcast. Quarterback problems, head coaches leaving in the middle of the season. They happened twice to them this year. So for this Southern Miss team to rebound and actually have a little bit of what I think is a maybe not a moral victory necessarily, losing to UTSA, but a little bit of a positive that you can take forward for the Golden Eagles. I do think this bodes well, perhaps, for the final weeks of the regular season for Southern Miss here. We will see how things go, but UTSA continuing to subvert expectations a little bit, having a decent season this year after all. We had a big game in the American Athletic Conference. Number 7, Cincinnati on the road against Central Florida. UCF is one of the better teams in the AAC, despite the fact that they've already lost a couple of conference games coming into this one. Cincinnati, we know, is great. This is a legit top 10 team. They are undefeated to this point in the season. Came in at 7-0. They moved to 8-0 with a big road win over UCF, 36-33. This was a really fun game to watch as well. UCF really gave Cincinnati all they could handle in this football game. For most of the game, it was back and forth, nobody really separating themselves, and Cincinnati did take that lead late and hold on to it. The Bearcats are a legitimate threat as a group of 5 team to be a dark horse playoff contender if the chips fall the right way. But that is going to take some help. We will say that is certainly going to take some help. If it is indeed Clemson and Notre Dame in the ACC championship game as we expect it to be, and Clemson were to win that game as we expect them to, with Trevor Lawrence now fully healthy and available, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard with Clemson and Notre Dame in that scenario. I believe would go to the playoff, not to mention your SEC champion, whether that's Florida or Alabama, assuming that team would have one loss at the most. That team is going to go, and then you're really going to pick Cincinnati or a BYU or someone like that over a potentially undefeated or one-loss Oregon, a potentially 2-loss, I guess, Big 12 champion over Ohio State. Yeah, that's definitely not happening. So it's going to be a tough road for a team like Cincinnati to make the playoff, I think. But they will get to a good bowl game at the very least. That much seems inevitable at this point. There's just not much beef left on their schedule. They're going to have to play, of course, a good team in the conference championship game. But this is a great Cincinnati football team. That's the bottom line. I know there's some discussion right now about the possibility of them scheduling BYU to in kind of one of these dates that they're now using to reschedule games that were postponed. And I would love to see that. I would love to see that personally. It would almost be like a preview for bowl season a little bit. Two teams that were not scheduled on the regular season. Great teams, similar level teams, I think, that would like to show off, boost their resumes a little bit. They both think they can win, that kind of thing. I love that. So moving forward, number 10, Wisconsin. At number 19, Northwestern. This was a great game, too, and a surprise to me. Quite frankly, I thought Wisconsin would take care of business on the road here, expose Northwestern. I thought this was a Northwestern team that, got off to a 4-0 start against, for the most part, not very great teams. That was not the case. Northwestern, this defense was all over Wisconsin all game long, holds the Badgers to just 7 points, and it's a 17-7 Northwestern win. Northwestern is a new top 10 team to me. They came into this game as number 19. We will see where the College Football Playoff Committee puts them. They, of course, will be releasing their very first set of rankings for this season Tuesday night, tomorrow night, if you're listening live here. It's really going to be interesting to see how you judge this Northwestern team, because this is a big win here, and this is a Wisconsin team that a lot of folks had, if not in the top 6-7 range, at least somewhere in the top 10. Most people had them in that range, I would say. And then Northwestern really just looked dominant in this game. I know they didn't score a ton of points. 17-7 isn't the sexiest score ever, but this was a big win. A big win for Northwestern, and they're now 5-0, staring at a potential Big Ten championship game berth, and that's pretty exciting if you're a Northwestern Wildcats fan. So good on Northwestern. They've also, I found from live tweeting that game over on our Twitter account, that they've got some great GIFs in the Northwestern GIF arsenal there. So check us out on Twitter if you want to see some more of that action. Again, that's at Upset Alert Pod. We had UCLA at Oregon. This was a surprisingly good game here. Number 11, Oregon, was tested in this one. UCLA losing by just a field goal. It was 38-35, advantage Ducks in that one. UCLA did lead this game at times, really at multiple times. And again, right on cue, the video highlights from UCLA Oregon are on the screen, twitch.tv/robotbraineater here. The Ducks ultimately, like I said, did find a way to win this one, but you got to give some credit to Chip Kelly and UCLA. Maybe they're starting to turn the page, to turn a corner a little bit, and get this football program going in the right direction. Hopefully so for Chip Kelly, hopefully so for that football program. They have been struggling a little bit for several years now. We had Georgia State at South Alabama. We'll kind of blow through these next few here. Georgia Southern wins 31-14. Mid-Tennessee at Troy, playing for the second time this year. Troy blew Mid-Tennessee out the first time, and this time, how about Middle Tennessee? The Blue Raiders getting revenge, 20-17 on the road. Iowa wins at Penn State, 41-21. A quick hot take here. You guys know at this point, if you've been watching any college football, that Penn State is bad this year. But if you didn't know how bad, they fall to 0-5 here. That is the worst start that Penn State football has ever had in the history of the football program. 0-5 after a 20-point home loss to the Iowa Hawkeyes. Iowa moves to 3-2. We had Nevada hosting San Diego State. I like this Nevada Wolfpack team a whole lot. Nevada moves to 5-0. San Diego State, a pretty good San Diego State team, mind you, that's already played some of the tougher games on their schedule. They fall to 3-2. You got to give some love to Nevada at this point. They are going to start to get some top 25 votes if they get another win. They may already be getting some, I'm not sure, but for us, they are not too far off. They were one of our biggest movers of the week in our updated poll of all, or updated ranking, rather, I guess is the better word, of all 127 teams. Cal at Oregon State. Oregon State wins the home game here, 31-27. Have to call that one a little bit of an upset. Nothing too crazy, though. I don't think the expectations for Cal have been through the roof or anything like that. What was through the roof was Alabama's offense on Saturday against the Kentucky Wildcats. Alabama really showed out in this game, 63-3. The final score here. Mac Jones just casually, 16 for 24, 230 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did throw a pick in this one as well. Bryce Young just 2 for 2 passing when he came into the game, but 53 yards and a touchdown as well. Averaging 26.5 yards per pass is not too shabby if you're Bryce Young coming off the bench there. Of course, the Alabama defense made some plays as well out there against the Wildcats, who just really were struggling. I mean, can't get anything going. You can't blame them. It is Alabama, the undisputed at this point number 1 team in the country. Alabama did have a pick 6 on defense as well in that one. They continue to look like the real deal. It's just going to be Alabama every week until proven otherwise, and that includes really the SEC championship game, I think, against Florida. Though that one could be interesting, at least we'll say. We'll get to that. When it comes. So we had number 17 Iowa State hosting Kansas State. Iowa State wins in blowout fashion, 45-0. The Cyclones, rather, I almost said the Hawkeyes. Iowa State fans might never forgive me if I said that. Iowa State really just laid it on thick here. This is not a bad Kansas State team, but they looked awful on Saturday. Iowa State is legitimately one of the best teams in the Big 12 this year. Right up there with Texas, right up there with Oklahoma State. And this Iowa State team really showed why they are on a tier above Kansas State, who, again, is a pretty good team this season. Virginia wins 55-15 over Abilene Christian. Nothing much to talk about there. Pittsburgh gets a big win, 47-14, hosting Virginia Tech. This score was an eye-popping one for me. Not only did I not expect Pitt to get a blowout win here, I didn't expect them to win the game at all. I expected VT to go on the road and really get a somewhat comfortable win. So this was a shocker to me, quite frankly. Both of these teams record-wise are in similar places. Pitt moves to 5-4, VT falls to 4-5. But this is a Virginia Tech team that I thought might have had a chance to win 8 or 9 games this year when we thought they were going to play a full 12-game schedule, and that simply has not been the case. This is a Pitt team that has had its ups and downs this year for sure. But they look pretty good, pretty darn good on Saturday, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. Got to give credit to the Pitt Panthers with a big win over the Hokies from Blacksburg. We had number 23 Auburn hosting Tennessee. Auburn wins that one 30-17. Started out early looking like Tennessee might be in for a little bit of a shocker. Like the Vols were going to come into Jordan-Hare and pick up a very unexpected win. Instead, Tennessee continues to spiral downward here. They are having a rough go of it ever since pretty much, I guess it was around that Georgia game that they lost earlier this year. They have really been spiraling downward. Auburn has rebounded nicely, ironically, I suppose, since losing that Georgia game, and this is a pretty good Auburn football team, I think. It was a team that at that point, when they got blown out by Stetson Bennett at quarterback for Georgia, that this Auburn football team really looked like they just were not going to be competitive at all this year. They were talking about wanting to fire Gus Malzahn. They were talking about get rid of Bo Nix at quarterback, bench him. Now this Auburn football team has rebounded fairly nicely, all the way to a 5-2 record, and Tennessee, on the other hand, sits at 2-5. Really some struggles for Jeremy Pruitt and company up in Knoxville. Will be interesting to see how long his future in Knoxville is. We had number 13, Georgia, hosting Mississippi State. This one was a shocker as well. Georgia does get the win 31-24. We'll start there. But this game was surprisingly close. Georgia's defense, all of a sudden, can't play. I don't know how to describe it, quite frankly. It is just a case of you can't have both things. I guess you can't have nice things, if you will. There was a nice David Pollock tweet about this Georgia football team this year, and let me see if I can pull this up here. He says, and this is, again, David Pollock from ESPN, at David Pollock 47 on Twitter. He says, what on earth is going on with Georgia? Now their quarterback, JT Daniels, can't miss, and they can't run the ball worth a flip. Can never have two things at the same time. Peanut butter, no jelly. Burger, no bun. Kool-Aid, no sugar. I thought that was hilarious when I saw that. Those of you who listen to the show frequently, you know I'm a Georgia football fan, so it was a very fitting comment, I think, because this Georgia football team all season long has had great defense, no passing offense whatsoever. Some games it's been more exposed than others. They had games like Auburn where the passing game didn't look too bad, but you get the games like Alabama and Florida, the two biggest games of the season, the regular season at least, for the Georgia Bulldogs. No quarterback play whatsoever pretty much in those games. Several interceptions thrown in both. Listen to these numbers, though. Georgia at quarterback on Saturday. JT Daniels in his first start at Georgia. 28 of 38, 401 passing yards, and 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Georgia team rushing stats, 23 carries for 8 yards. 8 yards. That is absolutely not going to get it done in most games if you're the Georgia Bulldogs. And then taking a look at the defensive side for Georgia, Mississippi State passing the ball, 41 of 52, 336 yards, and a touchdown through the air. You can't be giving up those kind of passing yards to a team like Mississippi State. Needless to say, Georgia does get out of Athens with the win, 31-24. We had Bedlam in this weekend as well. It was kind of a crazy weekend. Lots of great games across college football. Number 18, Oklahoma, hosting number 14, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma really didn't give the Pokes a chance to compete in this one. It was 41-13 Sooners. Honestly, there's not a ton to say about it. And when it comes to Bedlam, that is pretty shocking. You got Oklahoma State now with 2 losses. Oklahoma moves to 6-2. It is really a wide open Big 12. It's going to come down to some tiebreakers for sure to see who goes to that Big 12 championship game. We got just a few to fly through here. Number 21, Liberty at NC State. NC State actually gets the win here against number 21, Liberty. Gives them their first loss of the season, 15-14. Good on the Wolfpack there. Unfortunate circumstance, I suppose, for Hugh Freeze and the Flames. Lots of talk beginning to stir if Hugh Freeze will leave Liberty at the end of the season and maybe take a coaching job somewhere like South Carolina in the SEC if they are willing to look past, I guess, some of the off-the-field troubles in his past. We had Missouri at South Carolina. Speaking of the Gamecocks, Missouri wins this one on the road 17-10. Not a ton to talk about there. This one was really a wild card game with the firing of Will Muschamp during the week leading up to this football game. No idea where kind of the headspace of that Gamecocks football program would be at headed into this game. We had a wild one, Michigan at Rutgers, 48-42 for the Wolverines in triple overtime. Yes, that's right, Michigan and Rutgers in triple overtime. This has been a pesky Rutgers team for a lot of folks. They fall to 1-4. Michigan 2-3 now on the season. Has not had a very good football season, but of course they do pick up the win on the road in triple overtime. Arizona on the road against Washington. Washington picks this one up 44-27. An Arizona team that's just had the misfortune of playing some good football teams early on. They gave USC a very close game. They hung around for part of the game, I suppose you could say, with Washington here, but Washington definitely the better team winning there. We had number 20 USC on the road at Utah. USC does stay undefeated in this one with a 33-17 win. And then, last but not least, we had Boise State winning 40-32 on the road against Hawaii. So that really was the week in college football right there. And like I said, we got a couple of games coming up on Thursday. We're going to go ahead and get the predictions for those two out of the way so that when we get into what'll be a little bit different schedule this week, Wednesday's episode, getting into our Friday and Saturday predictions, which, by the way, day after Thanksgiving, there are a lot of football games and some really good ones, actually, a couple of them at least, to be played. So let's just get into these. We got two games on Thanksgiving Day this year. Colorado State at Air Force. That is a 2 p.m. game on Thanksgiving Day, CBS Sports Network. Air Force about a 5.5-point favorite in this one right now. I do like Air Force in that game. It's not a particularly sexy game. Neither of those teams have had great starts. Air Force at 2-2, Colorado State at 1-2. Excuse me. I'm rolling with Air Force pretty comfortably. I think they cover that margin and probably win by a couple of touchdowns, quite frankly. Then we've got New Mexico at Utah State. That is Thanksgiving evening, 7 p.m. on Fox Sports 1. New Mexico on the road comes in as a 5.5-point favorite. These two teams are a combined 0-8 thus far this season, so your guess is as good as mine on this one. I am going to roll with the home team, and I guess the home dog in this one, what would be a minor upset, I suppose, for Utah State. But who really knows? It would seem that your guess is as good as anybody's in that football game between Utah State and New Mexico. That's about going to wrap us up, though, for Upset Alert episode number 90, 90. So like I was saying earlier on in the show, we'll be back on a slightly modified schedule Wednesday rather than Thursday this week for our weekly predictions episode. And in the meantime, you can, of course, follow us on Twitter at Upset Alert Pod. You can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Google, whatever podcast service you prefer. Please do like us, subscribe to us on there. And if you have the time, take it to leave us that 5-star review. Helps us get more eyeballs and more ears on the podcast. In the meantime, thank you guys so much for checking out the show, whether you're on Twitch, podcast services, whatever it may be. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And until Wednesday, we will see you later.